Hi, you guys. Welcome back to Share Your Screen.
I'm Nikki. Sorry.
I'm Coco. And today's episode is going to be one of our really first, kind of deep dive evolutions into a creator, which has been a really interesting topic. I know we made TikToks about Emma Chamberlain.
Tons.
That people were really interested in. I think it was a great discussion. And we got so many comments being like, where can I watch the full podcast?
Yeah. And I also think it's really interesting to look at her career holistically, specifically, because she is one of, if not the only, to really go from this like YouTuber to mainstream media celebrity.
Right.
In this sort of way. And I think looking at her entire career from like 2017 to now and like what were the decisions that got to that point, and also like why did she specifically make this transition when not every creator has been able to do that.
Yeah, totally. And I think that'll be a question we keep in mind as we go. And like there are moments that I think are those tipping points for her. But it's just as an audience member, keep those in mind too. If you think that there's any tipping points, and if you have any moments that you think we missed or you have ideas on, let us know in the YouTube comments, because we love you guys leave such insightful things there.
Yeah.
We hit 10,000 followers.
Yes, we did.
Yes, and or
Y'all
the
ran it up.
Discord. Yeah, like you guys love just continuing the conversation with us. So please do that. And also, if you guys are listening and you leave a review, that helps us so much.
Please.
Yeah.
Seriously, a review on Spotify goes such a long way.
Yeah. So with all of that being said, I'm going to dive into Emma Chamberlain. And the title of this video is Emma Chamberlain Hasn't Changed, You Have. And the reason we're saying that is because so many people are having these discussions, but I really think that like she still is who she is at the root, but that her audience has grown. So we're going to start and do this through timelines. Beginning in 2017 is when she posted her first video. Now there's, discrepancies on what her first video was. I think it's like one of those Bobby Althoff things where she probably just like deleted or privated a few, which is totally fine. And the first one I could find was from June of 2017 called a try-on thrift haul. And just to like give you guys a idea of her growth, her first videos were in June of 2017. By October of that same year, probably one of the first controversies she had, she posted a very famous video now called Why I Quit School. And she quit school to pursue being a creator. And I think that this also just shows you how fast she blew up, that this became a full-time career for her, so much so that she left school within 4 months of starting.
And I think she had 2 or 3 million subs when she left school. So that's like 3 million subs in 4 months.
Right.
About like a growth rate like that is unheard of. Even like on TikTok, it's like to grow 3 million followers in 4 months is unheard of now.
Yes.
And to be doing that on YouTube in 2017 is really crazy. And I think it also is why she became this like phenomena so quickly.
And she really was growing, I think, because she was doing something that was so opposite to everyone else.
Absolutely.
Like, everyone was these very curated vlogs, like the Jake Pauls and the Team 10s, or like the DIY locker, very like colorful, as people literally call that era the oversaturated era, like literally taking the saturation and pulling it up. And she was so opposite of that. And I think that shows in her videos. And now I do think that there is some hints of the creator that she was to become early on. There was one video that she posted, and it was kind of a funny video with her friends trying to take cute photos, but she titled it 4:36 a.m. in San Francisco. And I think it's kind of a foreshadow that some of her best videos that she's posted recently are these very simple, almost like A24 of YouTube style.
Totally. I was actually going to talk about when you mentioned talking about her compared to like the other popular YouTubers of the time, the Jake Pauls, the Tana Mochos, the Cody Ko's, was her editing style.
Yeah.
She pioneered an entire genre of editing on YouTube. And it's an interesting comparison I draw with her and Mr. Beast too, as like two of like the absolute biggest creators to ever come from the platform, is that they both pioneered editing styles, but very, very different from one another. Like hers was the saturated, the zoom in, the expanded face,
Almost like
the sound
anti-editing.
effects.
Like
It
that.
was making fun of what editing was. And that is really where she kind of grows this brand as the anti-influencer was what she became known for, because what was popular at the time is what we talked about. We talked about this in another episode. I call it the Kardashian effect of the internet, where from 2010 to 2015 was just like the explosion
Opulence.
of the Kardashians and this glamorization of wealth and being performative. And think of like the Instagram baddies of like 2015 as like them on a yacht with like 18 visco filters on
Fit
the
tummy
photo,
tea.
face tuned. Yeah. And Emma Chamberlain was making YouTube videos in her high school with no makeup on and drinking coffee in her car. And that was so, I hate to use the word relatable. Like that's really like where she grew this audience of everything that was popular on the platform was like a lifestyle you aspired to. Like you wanted to be on that yacht. You wanted to have wealth. You wanted to go on the brand trip, whatever. But Emma Chamberlain got popular because she wasn't focused on what you could have. She was focused on like beautiful, making the mundane beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that's like really her superpower as a creator, is her ability to just find beauty in the most mundane, simple aspects of life.
Yeah, you make such good points. And like, even what you're saying about brand trips, one of the videos when I was going back on her profile where she really starts like collaborating and becoming this like quote unquote LA influencer, it was this Dote brand trip that she went on to, and we'll get into Dote. But she went on a Dote brand trip and it got like 10 million views, and it was like one big YouTube sleepover, but they went to like a trampoline park, and everyone's videos are like very like cookie cutter, like perfect vlogger. But Emma Chamberlain, in one of the edits, it's them jumping on a trampoline and like Emma doing like the splits, and she edited in like fart noises. So every time she's like, and like you wouldn't think to do that back then, but
super
she did.
kiddie, and it's
like irony.
Yeah, but it's like, as you're a 17-year-old having an audience of 13 to also 17-year-olds, like it makes sense why she was so popular.
Yeah, and Colin and Samir talked about her in a video, and they mentioned that like some of the top comments she gets is people saying like her vlogs make you feel like you're the last person on earth, like watching what's happened to the world. And she's really great at that. I think it's one of, and we're going to kind of come back to this theme throughout, but that Emma is really good at going back to even in these very pivotal moments like the Met Gala, where she's surrounded by thousands of people and millions watching and the biggest celebrities. She feels like she's alone on that carpet, and that's like a strong connection.
Yeah.
Now I want to get into late 2017. And again, this is just really like her videos went from, which seemed like a foreshadow, but like epic back to school haul, how to be a savage in class. And it's kind of her making fun of being in school. And then like a month later, it's why I left school. So I think it was kind of already the cynicism maybe that she had towards school. And to put into perspective for you guys, her growth, and I'm a big believer in like slow burns. I love Mr. Beast because it took him 5 years to get to his first 100,000 followers. I think that's awesome. I think Emma is like the exception to someone who blows up overnight and being able to sustain it. But she posted her first video in June of that year. By December, she was flying out to collaborate with Cody Co, which just shows you like her growth trajectory was like insane.
It's unheard of.
And now I want to get into 2018, because again, this was kind of a pivotal year for her. So we've already set up the tone that she was kind of blowing up because she was like an anti-influencer and was just giving people something unique. And even the way she edited her thumbnails was very counterintuitive to what you would think would go viral.
Yeah.
Now, 2018, I think she came to a crossroads that was very pivotal for her career, and she could have gone the typical and I hate when people say LA influencer. I'm from LA, born and raised. There's nothing wrong with LA. It's the people, it's the influencers that move here. But for the sake of the video, she could have gone this typical LA influencer route. And I think she toyed with that. And then a very pivotal thing happened, which we'll talk about, that I think was a blessing in disguise. But her first collaboration kind of with a friend group was in February of 2018. She collaborated, one of the girls was Summer McKeen, another big kind of Dote girl. And then posting her first vlog with Dote, which was in March. And I mean, I kind of, to get in her mind, I understand why maybe she feels like she talks a lot on her podcast about depression and anxiety. It sounds like her life has been very unstable, not in a bad way, but like it's changing month to month.
Yeah.
And when you look at her videos, it's crazy how unpredictable her life is.
Yeah, I mean, I have said time and time again, I think that young people on the internet receive so much criticism. I thank God every day that how I acted as a 15, 16, 17-year-old was not documented on a daily basis for millions of people to watch. I was an animal. I was so annoying.
Even a 23-year-old, I couldn't imagine. But
and then it sucks when people hold you to a standard of like, you're not how you were when you were 17. Like, duh.
Thank
I
God.
hope so. Yeah. Like, I hope so, you know? And people, but the way the internet is that when you create a YouTube, something like a YouTube video, is you're putting it in this snow globe of like someone can always go in and look in and see exactly how you were at that time. And I think it's really magnified with Emma Chamberlain because she did all these mundane, simple things. Like you felt like you really got to see. It's like her going to a grocery store. Yeah. So it's like that's so authentically her life that it does give this greater magnifying into how that aspect has changed. You know what I mean? Like,
totally.
Like going to the grocery store at Ralph's and coming back to your parents' house versus going to the grocery store at Erewhon and coming back to your $5 million mansion.
Yeah.
Like even those little
product
things become visual when you immortalize your life in content that way.
Yes. You make such great points. And it is like vulnerable and being understanding with people. And I also think, like, to your point, whenever people get mad at influencers and they're like, oh, you know, their content isn't how I found them. Like, I get that, but also imagine having the same job you had when you were 16. Like, like there's a difference. And when I was that age, I was working, you know, minimum wage at Starbucks, and it was so hard. But and like being an influencer is not hard, despite what anyone might tell you. It's really not. But I do think that like they're allowed to change their content and their perspective, because it would be painful to still have to make content like you're a 16-year-old.
Yeah, and you see the people that don't change their content burn out in 3 to 5 years.
Exactly. They might be trendy for 6 months, but it always gets them.
I think even that they just feel this like creative chokehold on themselves so much to the point where they're like, I have to do something exactly this way or it's not going to do well, which is not enjoyable, and I'd rather not do it at all. You see it happen all the time. Yeah. I feel like that happened with Casey Neistat a lot, where he is someone who like really also had a very specific, unique editing style. And then he would start taking these massive breaks from YouTube. And it's because like he had to do exactly this thing every single time, or else people wouldn't watch it.
Totally. It boxes you in. Now, one of the bigger controversies that Emma's had, she hasn't really had that many, but was the Dote collab. Now, when I was doing research and I remembered Dote, I was like,
Dote was a train wreck, girl.
It was a hot mess.
It was like every opportunity they had to do something wrong. It's like Dote has a brand trip and they're racist.
Yes.
Dote launches a new product and the product doesn't work. Like it was every opportunity for something to go wrong. It just did.
It did. And like, okay, so Dote, for anyone listening that doesn't know, it was kind of like what Revolve became, but it was this app for like Gen Z. Yeah. And they kind of like found all these different brands and like put it, and it was basically just like online shopping in an app. And yeah, it really was like what Revolve became, but for like a younger teenager. And they really like became popularized for doing these huge influencer brand trips. I remember like, again, like one of my guilty pleasures, and always will be, but like Tana Mojo, I remember at the time, like the reason I found out about Dote is because Tana would be like making videos, like purposely kissing up to Dote, being like, I just want to be sent on their next brand trip. So it was really like this brand trip thing. And it was all these, I mean, mainly like white, conventionally attractive, young teenage girls going on these trips. And it was the same ones over and over again. And Emma became kind of their poster child. And so she came out with a collaboration with them. And you guys, it was so confusing. It was like they've posted photos of her on the website, and like I love a mysterious marketing, but this was bizarro. They like
you can't even see the product.
It's like when you go on Sims and they're showering and there's like
mystery
pixels.
bag.
Yeah, like imagine like me selling this bracelet, but it's like pixelated. But it's not like it was like a cheap like surprise box. It was like it was very expensive.
Close.
And yeah, and I even made a video about it, and I was like, if anyone has bought a Dote thing, like please let me know. Also, if you still have it, send it. Like I will literally buy it from you for our pop culture museum one day. I would love to have like something in a Dote case.
That's so good.
But 2 people commented. Someone said, I bought a scrunchie and it came within 2 weeks, and it was like a normal scrunchie, but definitely not worth $25. And when I saw $25, I was like, for a hair tie that you're going to lose. And then someone else said, I got the teddy jacket. It lasted me through the winter, but it was definitely shitty quick, like the material. And so that was just 2 notes. But I think that Emma Chamberlain got a ton of backlash for this. And I think that it almost put her credibility on the line. And this, I think, even though it was probably really hard for her and the brand to go through, I think Emma Chamberlain learned a very important lesson here that, like you say, the glass ceiling comment.
Yeah.
Like you're equivalent to the brands you work with.
Your glass ceiling is who you talk about. Yeah. So if you work with a brand like Dote that's new and trying to target only influencers, that's all you ever be. But you see now when she's working with like Lancôme, then her ceiling is Paris Fashion Week.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I think she learned that with the backlash of Dote. And I also think it was a blessing in disguise because Dote would go on to get like a lot of backlash for how they treated POC influencers on creator trips, and like Emma Chamberlain was the face of them for so long, and I think she got out at the right time.
I think the downfall of Sister Squad and Dote was one of the best things to ever happen to Emma Chamberlain's career.
You're right.
Because she would not have carved out this solo path otherwise. Because if you think about how many views it was getting, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think she very quickly realized that in order to get to this like mainstream level celebrity, she needed to be a solo act. And honestly, I think being a solo act is when she shines the most.
Yes.
Like she's at her best cooking, doing a grocery store trip or like a thrift haul. You know what I mean? Like it's her ability to just sit and like hold a frame and talk to people in a way that makes you feel like you're with a friend. But once she's with somebody else, that feeling is no longer fully there all the time. And I don't think she would have ever hosted the Met Gala if her fame was rooted in Sister Squad, because they're not going to put all 4 of them up there. They're only going to put one. So once her fame was rooted in Emma Chamberlain, the person, then it makes sense for her to host. But you know what I mean? Like, I just think that she needed to be solo.
The distance. And that gives me such a good like comparison that you say, because you're spot on. It's almost the same. Emma Chamberlain leaving Sister Squad and then hosting the Met Gala is the same vibe as Liza Koshy leaving the Vlog Squad and then hosting the Met Gala.
You're right. That's actually just a flawless comparison.
Yeah.
And also I think it weirdly, like, kind of you reflect on it now of like, oh, Vlog Squad got popular because of Liza Koshy.
Yes.
Like she was really who put that on the map. Like, it's
to like
I don't know, it's
a
interesting.
different because David Dobrik wasn't really in the videos. He was filming his girlfriend Liza.
No, I think David
and
Dobrik
her
got
friends.
popular because of Liza.
Right. Yes. No, I agree. Now, to just capture the timeline in her meteoric rise, we're still in 2018. Her first video was posted in June of 2017. Her first collaboration video with the Dolan twins and James Charles was in June of 2018, the next year. So within a year, she was collaborating with this really big group. Their first video was titled Turning Me Into an LA Girl, and it was kind of this like something that she's really good at, which is being a part of LA influencer culture, but like making fun of it. Or even when she's at the Met Gala, it's like she's kind of removed. It's like she's like a fly on the wall versus like being the people within the room in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the awkward girl effect, which you're seeing become really popular again with Bobby Althoff, Amelia Dims, where it's like you being the host is personifying what the viewer would feel in that experience. So you're not a celebrity who's there. You're a random person who's like, oh my God, I'm surrounded by famous people. And I think that makes an audience latch onto it a bit more, because that's how they would feel in that scenario. Not like when Keke Palmer hosted, for example, she was incredible, but she's been there before. You know what I mean? It's a different
And it's
feeling
why,
to it.
and I think it's why they always have two hosts at the Met Gala. They have
totally.
that internet person like Emma Chamberlain,
Yep.
and then they have either on the other side of the stairs is like a Kiki Palmer or a Vanessa Hudgens,
Totally.
like someone more in the industry. And that's such a good point that you make. Now, the Sister Squad collaboration was racking in like crazy views.
I think Sister Squad is still her most viewed video of all time. I think
Yeah,
there's
it's
one
at
video that's like
38
60
million.
million views
Yeah.
or something. It's crazy.
It was so high. And by the end of that year of 2018, they would appear in now the infamous YouTube Rewind.
YouTube Rewind was iconic.
I miss it. I miss how like much of a hot mess it
And
was.
it's
And I
so
want to be in
funny
one.
how TikTok got so much shame for saying that they manually boosted people. Yet
know.
YouTube did an
Admitted it.
entire YouTube Rewind where they literally admitted these were the creators
They gave you
that
the
we
roster.
put on the most this year in our algorithm. Keep in mind, the YouTube page is literally manual.
Yeah,
like
the-
it's
the
not
trending
based off an
page.
algorithm. It's literally manually curated by a team at YouTube.
Yeah.
And it was so interesting to me when TikTok got all that criticism, when YouTube had been doing it for years and
Yeah.
being very public about it.
Yeah, well, you know what was so funny about the TikTok one, which is like some parts iconic, like some parts like I can see where it's wrong. The employees at TikTok were heating themselves.
See, I love that.
No, I like
If you're an intern making
Your friends, like,
$50,000 a
Venmoing you to
year
heat
and
them.
with no benefits, no PTO, you heat your own
was-
videos, girl.
yeah,
you
but-
heat your own videos.
But you're so right. The YouTube Rewind was essentially YouTube just giving you their BCC email list of like who they like reach out to like push out that month.
Literally, and then they would do
Allegedly.
these like crazy YouTube original specials with them and stuff like that.
Right.
Like
It was
Liza
so
Koshy, great
manufactured.
example. Obviously, it's manufactured.
Well, and that leads me to my next point. I'm so glad you brought that up because two things. One, it reminds me of a conversation that happened with Taylor Lorenzen in her book Extremely Online, where I want to make the comparison that I think Emma Chamberlain and Tana Mojo are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to like fame. Like they blew up around the same time and they were very like anti-influencer branding. But Emma Chamberlain, and we're going to get into it, she had connections within the industry that really kind of like, I think saw a light in her and saw her potential and propped her up. And it was literally like the people around her. Whereas Tana Mojo, and she's talked about this, but Tana Mojo, and because she's made choices that have put her in this box, but she's sometimes shunned by the industry and she misses out on opportunities. But Tana has said time and time again, like, my audience shows up for me. Like these brands don't give me the brand deals, but if you can get me in a room with those other influencers, my audience is going to show up for me every single time. And what Taylor Lorenz said was that like TanaCon, although it was a failure, it was kind of this pivotal moment online where the giants like YouTube realized that they can't really pick who gets famous anymore.
Yes.
Sometimes someone like Tana comes trailing in from the side.
Because they didn't want her to be famous.
Exactly.
She represented this like not brand safe section of the internet, and YouTube as a platform wants people who make videos that can get monetized.
And yet they made people like Colleen Ballinger famous, but that's a conversation for another day.
Let's talk about that. Like it's exactly a great point of like they didn't want her to be famous, and I think them continuously shunning Tana Mojo from things like VidCon made her more popular because it created this underdog effect of people are like, oh my God, that's my favorite creator. You won't let her in. I need to comment. I need to share this. Like we need to talk about it. Another person who was very good at manipulating that kind of narrative, who's also not acceptable, Shane Dawson. Like he was so good at making himself the victim. Like I'll never forget crying in a $5 million mansion that he didn't get paid enough from brand deals, crying in a closet. And at the time, as a 16-year-old, I was watching it, I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe he has to go through that. And then I think back on it now and I'm like, the property taxes on that house alone is more than probably both of us will make this year combined. Like he was doing fine.
I remember thinking like he was so brave for only getting like 15% from his Hot Topic deal and not 20.
Exactly.
And and so so that's just a point that I wanted to make, that I think Emma Chamberlain is really great too at like having these kind of behind the scenes connections. And one person that I've never heard anyone really talk about is that really helped Emma Chamberlain get these Paris Fashion Week and get on the Met Gala and be the first influencer to be the face of Louis Vuitton. His name is Derek Glasberg, and he is the head of beauty and fashion partnerships at YouTube. And so they start making videos together in 2019. She was on his YouTube channel, which has like 60,000 followers. He has 2 million on Instagram. So he is like a public figure.
Yeah.
But I think more so for people like us who are interested in the kind of like the people that are very important behind the scenes.
Right.
And I think he saw a spark in Emma when she first started and was able to kind of like she was the one driving the ship, but he gave her an extra engine that maybe made her ship go faster than the other influencers.
And I think that is because he saw that she could be this mascot for a Gen Z female demographic. I think he saw as like, we can take this girl and use her as the symbolism for a Gen Z girl. And that's why they want her to go to Paris Fashion Week. They want a Gen Z female audience to care about Fashion Week. They want her to go to the Met Gala. Why? Because not enough young people watch award shows and things like that. Like, they started to position her with these things because I think someone in the industry really quickly realized, like, if one person embodies a very, very specific audience or specific demographic, we can then start to pair her with people who are trying to reach that audience. Like, that's really when I think she started to have this breakthrough into mainstream even, is because they saw the value of, like, we want somebody who can just represent young people. You know what I mean?
She was the thread between like traditional media and digital media. Yeah. And so I do think that, like, if you're ever a creator and you're kind of down on yourself about why am I not, getting the same awards or the same opportunities, like, so much of it too is the people in your corner behind the scenes rallying for you. And sometimes that's kind of out of your control in some ways. And I always say too, like, part of being like a monetizable and successful creator, at least from what I've experienced, is like maybe 10 to 20% of it is like making good videos. And the other like 80% is like responding to emails, like being the first to respond to a brand when they're reaching out, or like, having meetings with brands. Like, that's where the people are making the money. And those are the creators that like have a career versus the creators who kind of like haven't been able to make that jump.
Yeah. And to quote Greg Goodfried, you're defined by what you're willing not to do as opposed to what you are.
Being able to say no to brand deals.
Exactly. Like what you're willing to pass up on for the sake of maintaining some sort of core message is such a true factor. And going back to what you said about like the 20 to 80 thing, I think that's so true. I think 20% of it, like making videos, is how you get to that level. But what keeps you at that level, because you see people rise and fall on the internet in 6 months all the time. It's literally happening on a weekly basis at this point. And what keeps you there is you're someone who is willing to say, like, what are your values? Like, what do you stand for? And how are you creating some sort of like actual monetizable brand around that? Because personalities or senses of humor or like things like that are trendy. They come and go, right? Like, it's why people cringe at like old millennial BuzzFeed videos, right? But at the time that was getting 40 million views. Like, it's funny and made fun of on the internet now, but I'm saying, like, personality types are literally trends, but like a value system, an ethos, like something you believe in, like education or whatever, like that transcends any sort of trend. It's
any video you can make,
it's
like,
a
that's
foundation. And it's like, if you're always educating people, or why it's why people like, I think Gordon Ramsay have like 10 plus year long careers, because food is timeless. You know what I mean? Like something like that. I don't know. It's just, I really, really think about that too when it comes to like, what is the difference between these people who blow up and fall in a year versus these 10-year creators?
You make such a good point. Like, I think that one of the great things that Emma did with branding is, it's not necessarily about who you are as a creator. It's more about who you're not as a creator. And she was so good at being like, I've moved to LA, but I'm not the LA influencer. I'm at the Met Gala, but I'm not the detached A-list celebrity yet. Like, I'm hanging out with, all of these like hype house people, but I'm not a TikToker. Like, she was so good at defining who she wasn't. And that, I think, is so much more powerful than being, this is who I am. oh, wait, like being a knitter now is trendy. I'm also that.
Right.
Oh, wait, being like the tube girl is trendy. Well, I'm also that.
Right.
Like the most successful people are the ones who see these trends come and go and they're like, well, I'm still not that. This is who I am.
Emma Chamberlain's magic was almost like she could identify when something was about to be really, really popular and would be a part of it, but make fun of it. Distance herself from it. Like you exactly said, the LA influencer, or when TikTok started blowing up, like she would make videos with people in Hype House, but it's her not dancing while they are. You know what I mean? To capitalize off the virality, but to always be like, I'm different from this.
Yes.
And that is totally, but I also think Emma Chamberlain focusing so much on relatability is also her greatest Achilles heel. Like it is this double-edged sword that I think has kind of created and destroyed her brand at the same time, where if you make your entire brand about being relatable, then you find success, it is inevitable you won't be relatable anymore. And I think that is not something that people talk about with like lifestyle creators and stuff like that too. That's so interesting. Like she grew by making videos of a fake Gucci shirt where she drew it with a marker, but is now invited to Paris Fashion Week by Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's why people say you've changed. But also I think it's like an interesting paradox, because I don't know why people hold her to that standard. Like, girl, if you were invited to Paris Fashion Week by Louis Vuitton, you're telling me you wouldn't go? Like, I hate when people view that as a criticism. But it is interesting how when you anchor yourself into being relatable, people will relate to you. But then you will age and change the way everybody ages and changes, and not be relatable to a specific audience anymore. And I also think it's weird that people criticize her for that instead of being like, oh, maybe this person who I liked when I was 16, I don't like anymore. The same way your favorite song, your favorite food, your car that you drove when you were 16 is not the same anymore, right? Like you have different tastes as you age and change, and that's true with content as well. And I don't understand why the criticism is always like, let me blame the creator. Like you've changed, you're a different person, instead of like, maybe we've all aged 6 years and like what I like and what you like aren't the same anymore. Yeah,
totally. And speaking of change, like I think what I think was the tipping point, and it's documented literally on her channel, but in February of 2019, she posts potentially one of her last collaborations with a YouTuber, and it's turning JoJo Siwa into me, and it got 13 million views, so it was a successful video. Her next video was, I went to Paris Fashion Week, and it was her first time going with Louis Vuitton, and this got 14 million views, so both were getting great views. However, she leaned away after that JoJo video from collaborating with other YouTubers and fully leaned into the fashion thing. And I think that between February and March of 2019 was her tipping point in public perception.
Your glass ceiling is who you talk about.
Exactly.
If you only talk about JoJo Siwa, all you'll ever be is a YouTuber.
Right.
But if you are talking about Paris Fashion Week and going to the Met Gala, then your peers become these celebrities, not other creators, right? And I think, again, going back to her being this solo act really differentiated her, because it removed her from people comparing her to other YouTubers, and instead she was kind of put in this bubble, and that's why she was able to like make this transition.
Totally. And now in 2020 and now up until this point, she's really experimented with more cinematic YouTube videos, I would say. Like she had one that was like every day is the same, and a lot of her YouTube videos feel like they could live in like an A24 universe. Yeah. And I think that I have two thumbnails that I'll have on the screen, but specifically with the Met Gala thumbnail, there's not a celebrity in it. There's not a Jack Harlow. There's not a Gigi Hadid. The Met Gala thumbnail and the Everyday is the Same thumbnail, one is on one of the biggest red carpets in the world. One is just presumably in her apartment alone or her house alone. And she looks sad. You feel bad for her. Yeah. And I think that's kind of, when I realized that, I was like, oh my God, that's her branding. Like, even when I see clips of her on Anything Goes podcast, like the way that she's sitting in her room, like you feel bad for her. Like you kind of want to befriend her. Like I think she's really good at playing this part of like the person in a friend group who's maybe quiet and shy. So you go out of your way to like put your arm around them and be like, how are you doing? Like, you know, and I think that like her thumbnails evoke that emotion of like, you said it like when we were prepping about like the Met Gala thumbnail that like you want to be there with her and like comfort her.
Yeah, exactly. It's this idea of joint isolation. I'm alone watching YouTube, you're alone doing that. Let's be alone together. Is this weird thing that like,
so good at that.
Yeah, by isolating herself, again, it makes the viewer feel personified by that experience.
As the viewer, you feel responsible. Like, oh my God, I have to watch this Met Gala video because she's so lonely. And if I don't watch this YouTube video, like she's going to be alone on the carpet.
Totally. And also just like with thumbnail strategy in general, I think it's always like, you want to watch this video because you're like, how could somebody be lonely at the Met Gala?
Yeah.
How could they not be smiling and ecstatic? It's almost like it creates this curiosity of like, what are you sad about?
Yeah. And even with the way that she films her actual videos, it's very just the most intimate relationship is her and the viewer. And like, you know, the one at the Met Gala, of course, she probably couldn't film there. And Vogue had all the videos living on their account from the carpet, but Emma Chamberlain's Met Gala vlog, if it was like a Jake Paul or even like a Tana
like,
Mojo,
hey, what's up, guys? We're going to the Met Gala.
Yeah, like it would. The first scene would have been her and Gigi Hadid, you know, but Emma Chamberlain's entire Met Gala vlog is like her alone in the hotel room with no makeup, like sitting at her desk or in the bath, just talking to the camera. And I think that just shows that no matter what stage she's on, she really knows that the biggest connection is between her and her viewer and not necessarily what she's doing. Now, I want to get into just two last things outside of her YouTube channel, and then we can just like have our discussion points. But podcasting, we'd kind of mentioned it, but she started a podcast initially called Stupid Genius, pretty much been wiped from the internet. You can see some like YouTube accounts with like 1,000 subscribers have uploaded deleted episodes. Yeah.
I remember this.
Like I've tried to listen to one episode and maybe it's just not for me, and that's okay. Again, I want to say like the criticism here is like when you make public content, it's okay to be criticized. If anything, be worried when people aren't critiquing it because it means no one's paying attention. And I think people are really protective of Emma, but I almost think it's like an insult to her intelligence or almost infantilizing her when people are like, oh my God, like you can't say that like you didn't like this one episode of her podcast because like you're gonna hurt her feelings. I'm like, I think like it's, for example, Martin Scorsese just put out a great movie right now, Killers of the Flower Moon. Guess what? He's one of the best directors in the world making millions. He also pays the price because he's on Rotten Tomatoes and people are hating, you know? Like that's just part of being a creator.
It's the price of
entry
to
being seen. And it's a great thing to have people care enough to, you know, unless someone's being mean or rude, that's different. But I'm just saying that to say when I listen to an episode of Stupid Genius, and I have podcast episodes that aren't great, I have this and that, but it was not a good episode. It was her being like, I love dreaming. Well, I have dreams when I sleep.
Yeah,
I was like,
I think it's just an example of her not sticking to what people find valuable about her content. That's even the problem with Anything Goes, I think sometimes. Is like you watch Emma Chamberlain because you love the way she romanticizes this mundane and can do these simple everyday tasks like going to the grocery store and you feel like you're doing it with a friend, and that's a great video. She's so entertaining, she's so talented, and she's so creative. But just because you like somebody going to a grocery store does not mean you want their thoughts on love or the universe or you know what I mean. Like I think it's interesting that people are like, well, I don't like this. And it's like fine not to like it. Again, you're allowed to have thoughts and opinions, but then like just because you liked somebody doing something in one format doesn't mean you have to like them doing something in another. Right. And it's not their fault if you don't. Like it's just not for you. That's fine.
Yeah. The thing that I think has made her a lot of money is Chamberlain Coffee.
It's one of the best decisions she ever made.
Exactly. And I love that she isn't the face of it. Like the branding is like these little owls. And I remember when we worked at BuzzFeed and I'd come in with my Chamberlain Coffee mason jar, which I actually love their coffee. And we would always joke that it was like Flat Stanley. Like we wanted to take the cup around and like take photos of it because it would always be in like random people's like cars if I left it there, or like in a random part of the office like weeks later if I lost it. But Chamberlain Coffee, it seems to be pretty successful. I mean, you never really know. It's a private company. I saw articles that they just raised like $7 million in private funding, and they just launched in Walmart. I do think that she, again, has a really great publicist and a team around her, because when I was looking up Chamberlain Coffee on Google and then I searched by news articles, there's so many articles that you can just tell are like written by a publicist or like sent, where it'd be like, say like Us Weekly, and it'd be like, Chamberlain Coffee like loves this matcha for your, and I'm like, that sounds like it was just a publicist getting the new matcha line like in a kind of floozy article, which that's just the name of the game.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's also probably not even done by her at that point. I'm sure there's like a team that she's not, she doesn't even know that it's happening.
Yeah.
But I think Chamberlain Coffee was like the best decision she ever made.
Yeah.
And it's such a perfect example of how to start a business as a creator when you want to have something that you can promote organically. Like, she doesn't have to make it an entire 3-minute call out of a video. Like, she can just be doing whatever, driving wherever she's going to drive, and she sips her coffee and it's in her mug or in her, like, that's so genius. And it's so like, you're not cramming it down the audience's throat, and that makes them want it even more.
Yeah. And it really is that like idea of, I hate when people just throw around buzzwords and they don't know what it is, or like they don't really specify like authenticity, relatability. But I always say like authenticity is doing something you would be doing whether a camera is filming you or not.
Absolutely.
And her, like, she drinks coffee. One of her first viral videos when she started in 2017 was like trying 10 different coffees, or like,
yeah, I remember.
drank 10 different
I even
coffees.
remember watching the videos when she was still in high school and she was drinking coffee in her car. Like, it's always been a core part of her video.
Exactly.
And it's exactly what you said. Like, and if you want to start a business, I think that's a great thing to think about. Like, what would you do regardless of whether the camera was on or not?
Yeah.
Because that's something you'll be passionate about to promote and grow every day.
Exactly. And yeah, and like her, you know, her being the face of Lancome is different because that might be a year or 2-year partnership or longer, but she's not necessarily trying to sell you anything. Whereas like the coffee, like that's who she is, and so it's her brand.
Totally.
Now I want to get into some discussion points as we kind of wrap up, but one of them is Emma Chamberlain versus other top YouTubers, and I want to make the comparison of why Emma Chamberlain and Mr. Beast are so opposite.
Very
opposite. Now, Mr. Beast, and they've both talked about one another in like trying to understand one another in different interviews.
It's funny.
And yes, and you can tell they're kind of like confused about one another, not in a bad way. They're just so different, and yet they're both at the top. Now, Mr. Beast, I think, has really industrialized a YouTube video.
Industrialize is the
It's an
perfect
assembly
word for
line.
it. It is an assembly line.
He has someone doing
It's
his
a
thumbnails.
formula. Yep.
Exactly.
It's like there's this part of the team, the frame changes every this amount of seconds.
Exactly.
There's
And
text at this part, there's not text at that part.
And it's great, and it works for him, and it's why he's at the top. It makes sense. Emma Chamberlain throws all formulas and industrialization of a video out the window, and hers are just truly authentic. Does that mean sometimes they might be kind of boring compared to a Mr. Beast video? Some people might say,
Yeah.
but what they are is they are giving you companionship. And I always say, I love saying this because I truly believe it, that the most valuable types of content aren't always the ones that are super entertaining, but they are the ones that provide people with companionship.
Absolutely. And I think that's what Mr. Beast doesn't understand about Emma
Exactly.
Chamberlain, is that he thinks her videos are boring, but them being boring is the entire point, because everyone on planet Earth has been bored at some point. And that's an experience you can relate to. Or just even going to the, like, again, going to the grocery store, going thrifting, going to school, whatever. It's so boring that it's so attainable to the viewer. They really resonate with that experience, whereas not one of us have ever given somebody $500,000 because they stayed in a house for 30 days.
That.
Like, no one does that.
And that's the art of his, is that they're
exactly.
extreme.
It's not that there's a right or wrong answer. It's just exactly extremes of that spectrum.
And they're just so different. And she even said in a New York Times interview that, like, and it was from earlier this year, but she was saying, I don't really know much about Mr. Beast. Like, his videos aren't about him. I don't know what his room looks like. I don't know what the inside of his car looks like. And that's such a good point. And I think maybe that's part of like I think Mr. Beast has almost become more of like a streaming platform in a way, whereas Emma Chamberlain is still her no matter what platform she's on. Or so yeah, I just think that those two comparisons were interesting. I think the Emma Chamberlain and Tana Mojo comparison is interesting, that like, you know, if you ever feel bad about yourself not being successful, sometimes it's also just like the people that really are getting crazy opportunities, it might be someone on an email thread with them. It might be someone they met in passing, someone that took them under their wing. For Emma Chamberlain, I would argue that's Derek Glasberg. Whereas like Tana Mojo is proof that you can still be successful even without having everyone championing you. Because again, like if Tana Mojo just was given certain opportunities, she could get her fans in the room, but she doesn't always get those.
Right.
So I think those are two good comparisons to Emma Chamberlain in terms of like where she's different.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to talk about bad ideas only for Emma Chamberlain, and maybe we'll end here.
I have some good ones.
Let's hear what your good bad ideas are.
I think it was $1 million mistake that Emma Chamberlain did not launch a home decor line right after that Architectural Digest interview, because it went absolutely viral. Her house is beautiful and she makes so much content in her house. She would be able to promote it in the same way she promotes Chamberlain Coffee, right? Where she's just doing what she normally does, but sipping it. Like, I cannot believe she didn't do some sort of home decor. And like, even her podcast, she's laying in her bed. Like, it could be an Emma Chamberlain bed frame. Like, have you seen the collaboration like Victoria Paris did with Anthropology?
Yeah.
Where she curated an entire home decor line for them? I could have so seen something like that with Emma Chamberlain and a Urban Outfitters. Would have been such a good partner. And if you think about their audience too, it's like a bunch of people who are young women, probably going to college or are about to get their first apartment or are, you know, moving out. And that's a time of their life when you buy a lot of stuff for your house. Like, I am eternally fascinated as to why she didn't do that. But I do think it's a genius idea that she never started a fashion brand.
Really? Why?
Because I think she realizes that a lot of her money and notoriety and fame into this mainstream media is through fashion. And the second she makes her own fashion brand, she's not going to might not get invited by Louis Vuitton to New York Fashion Week.
You're right. She becomes a competitor.
If she starts a makeup brand, maybe Lancôme is not going to invite her to the Met, whatever, you know what I mean? But by doing coffee or doing home decor, like branching out in these other directions where she has no competition, it's why she stays winning and like why she stays on top, I think.
You make such a good point. In home decor is like people spend so much money now on home decor because they spend so much time at home, and like we don't really have like it just would have been I'm surprised. You're right. I'm surprised. I think she could have gone for something maybe even higher end than Urban Outfitters, but who knows?
I chose Urban Outfitters just because the price point. Like her audience is so young, which is another thing people have to think about.
True.
And also I think it's interesting, like the whole Dote thing even is an interesting like downfall of like the problems of having a young audience.
I know.
It's like $25 is a lot to them.
Yeah. I think her audience is growing up though, and I wouldn't be surprised if she leans more into one of my bad ideas, which we had kind of talked about, but I think she should start like an audio book club through her podcast on Spotify. Good. It'd be such a great extension of her podcast. And again, like something I've said before, but I think that it would differentiate her from the other top podcasts that she's competing with, like Call Her Daddy, where they kind of thrive because they have all of these celebrities on, and that wouldn't make sense for her to do that.
And it's like, although she's not a book talker, it somehow feels on brand still. Yeah. Like all of her videos are alone or in her bed or making soup. Like, I don't know, just seeing her leaning into the introvert branding, as you've said, would be a really, really good book club. Like even using the word introvert in the title of the book club, I think would be genius.
So true. What's your other idea? Do you have others?
I don't think so.
I know you've kind of mentioned it, and I think I'd love for us to end on this note. I think it would be great, like you had said, if Emma Chamberlain went into behind the scenes of the camera as a director, cinematic.
Emma Chamberlain needs to get into directing. Like, I think she would be so good at directing like a music video, especially if it's like a more somber, sad type song, like a Lana Del Rey music video.
That could be the start.
I could totally see her doing something like that. And it's funny because she blew up for pioneering this entire editing style that is still the most popular on the platform today. You see the zoom ins, you see the face expansion, and I think she would absolutely be able to bring that same skill set to doing something for a music artist. Like, I think it would be so genius, and it would be a way to branch her out again into an industry she's not currently a part of, but is still very mainstream media.
Yeah. See, I think in her 30s, Emma Chamberlain could go the director route and be similar to what we're seeing with like Greta Gerwig.
Yeah, or like an Elle Mills was another comparison.
Yeah, or I think her name's like Sophia, the one who did the Elvis Priscilla movie.
Sofia Coppola. Like, she could go, I think Emma Chamberlain, it would have to be a skill that like I mean, it's different making a YouTube video by yourself versus directing a team of hundreds. But I think that I would love to see what she could create if she did that. Totally.
I think it would be a way for her. She doesn't seem to always like to be in the public eye, and she could kind of pull back a little bit. And again, like, her videos to me exist almost in this like A24 world. Maybe this isn't correct. I would love to hear your thoughts. Wes Anderson in a way, like these still frames with everything else moving in the scene.
Yeah.
I just think that like her going more of like the movie director route would be so fascinating.
It would be super interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think Emma Chamberlain could start a reality TV show?
I think she wouldn't. She doesn't take me as like a
me
reality.
neither, but what is really the difference between a vlog and reality TV? Like, I guess,
but
like,
she would have to have other people in it, and she doesn't like having other people in her
that's a good
videos.
point.
Like, the beauty of reality TV is seeing multiple people
cast,
at once.
messy,
cast,
yeah.
the ensemble.
The ensemble.
She
That's a
doesn't
good
really
point.
have an ensemble, but I mean, maybe it would be more of like, maybe instead of reality TV, like a documentary.
There
where
you
she's
go.
Doing something.
Emma Chamberlain would make a fantastic documentary. I actually think she should direct a documentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, she would be
She'd
so good at it. Like, maybe a documentary on the internet or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, she would be great at that. So with all of that being said, that was kind of her evolution until now. And it's why our idea is like, she still is the core of who she is. I think it's okay that like you as an audience member have maybe changed and grown, because that happens, and you can still enjoy your favorite creators. Just maybe you're not relating to them anymore. Maybe they're just giving you companionship.
I think the criticism of Emma Chamberlain is that she's changed. And I think I would make the argument that the problem is that she hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Like, you see people criticizing her podcast, and they're like, these are the thoughts I had when I was 16 or 17, which is the age she had when she started YouTube.
Yeah.
And it is obviously an emotionally stunting experience.
Oh, yeah.
To have your life put online in that way. And I think that it's funny how people criticize her for changing. And what I think has actually happened is that you probably started watching her when you were 17. And those were thoughts you also had when you were 17. But now that you're 23 or 25, that you maybe don't feel the same way anymore. Yeah. And that's okay. People age and change, but then maybe it's not you, but then maybe it's not Emma who's changed, really. Maybe it's you.
Yeah. And that's okay. And you can still enjoy them.
Exactly.
Oh, well, that was like, I really loved this kind of deep dive.
Me
and
too.
Maybe one day we'll have her on as a guest.
I would love
manifesting.
That. I loved this format.
Yeah.
I thought it was really, really interesting. You did so good at the research.
Thank you.
Hats
and
off
I
to
feel like the
Coco in the comments,
pacing.
everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Let me know if you guys want us to do more. I think we could do more of this with other creators.
Yeah. Comment other creators if you're a subscriber.
Brands,
and don't forget to give us a rating on Spotify. Please hit the 5 stars.
Apple,
subscribe
Google.
if you hasn't on YouTube. And we love you all.
Yeah.
Lots.
And send this to a friend that is just as into this stuff as we are.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you guys.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.